This is Cybersound, your simplified and fundamentals-focused source for all things cybersecurity, with your hosts, Jason Pufall, Stephen Maresca, and Matt Fusaro.
Welcome to Cybersound. I'm your host, Jason Pufall, joined, as always, by Steve Maresca and Matt Fusaro.
Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Well, it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The theme this year is see yourself in cyber. 4 things we can do: enable multi-factor authentication, use strong passwords, recognize and report phishing, and update your software. Could it be more boring? Truly, could it be more boring? I see myself in cyber being bored this year. This is horrifying that we're still talking about all of these. In my opinion.
I also am not sure I understand the title or the theme yet.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a bunch of technologies they threw out there. They're important. I don't want to. I don't want to diminish their importance, but we've been talking about them for ever, forever,
And yet, they are evergreen. So perhaps that's why they're coming back up.
I don't know. So multi-factor, I get that people are sort of now adopting it after a bunch of discussions. So maybe that one. Strong passwords, for crying out loud.
Here's my take on this. And my understanding of what CISA put out is that this is trying to focus on the linkage between home and work or personal activities. I think, generally speaking, it's better on the job. Right?
Because businesses are forcing people to do it?
Yeah. That's all.
Okay.
It's real simple. And people are lax at home.
And mainframes are going away. To your point a minute ago when we were chatting about 7-character passwords from the 80s, so there's fewer mainframes?
Any day now.
Yeah, any day now.
Mm-hmm.
Recognize and report phishing. I mean, I can't stand it. I can't stand showing people images of a common phishing message anymore where it says, "Dear Sir," and there's a misspelling and there's a sense of urgency. Haven't we learned?
No.
I mean, really, people, I guess, haven't learned. But here we are talking about it year in and year out to the point where we have to make a whole month about it.
I think it's funny that, all these training companies come out and all this material is out there and they all say the exact same thing. Nobody's doing it any different.
Nope.
The most refined ones, use a live actor or try to make it comedic and it's forced. Yeah. I mean, maybe you capture some people who are less likely to read the content or something like that, but there's only so far you can go.
Right. And people fall for it. I mean, we do the phishing testing and the numbers are sort of always the same. And I get that it's getting a little more sophisticated is not the right word. I think, well written, maybe well crafted, some of these emails. But I don't know. Trust your gut. Be careful. I mean, how many times can you say it? We stop a lot. Enough gets through to be a problem. So we have to keep talking about it.
So you seem really depressed about it.
I am.
I know it's starting to get cooler out.
It's rainy today.
Coming.
So it's the reason because I actually honestly kind of look forward to Cybersecurity Month each year. And I feel like it's an opportunity to actually have the conversation around salient security topics. And so when I did see yourself in cyber come up and I saw what the kind of highlights were, I really was bummed out by the fact that we're still talking about these things. But
it's kind of like Valentine's Day being the only one day, a year that you're supposed to show your adoration.
So
for someone.
Lucky that I've been permitted to ignore Valentine's Day.
Your wife is special.
We're lucky in that way.
Yes, but you understand the point, right? It's not just once a year and 1 month. It's somewhat silly from that standpoint.
Yeah.
I want to turn it on its head. I suspect that all of this with the repetition, frankly, the painful droning on subjects that don't really shift dramatically, is attached to the idea that security needs to be 100% accurate and successful at every juncture, or it's a failure, which is it's not stated explicitly in everything that's, behind security awareness, right? But that notion as an underlying sort of thought process doesn't teach people to say, hey, it's okay if you fail. Everybody does it. It's okay if you made a mistake. Just learn from it. Or, understand what the normal rates of failure are and aim for that. Because frankly, that is success.
So that's interesting. So you're saying, let's put a positive spin on it. It's okay if your organization fails some percentage of legitimate phishing.
There's loss built into budgets every year. There's an expectation that your equipment's going to fail and you need to replace it. That's how everything else works.
It's true, but a single failure of an employee responding to a phish could result in a significant compromise, right? And that is one of the challenges on this. So I appreciate the positive spin. Failing by responding to a phishing message is a little different than a server failing and having then to restore from backup.
But that hypothetical can apply in lots of different ways if you're creative about it. I think, reframing it is more helpful than repeating it constantly, because there's a potential of teaching people that, hey, even the really adept security practitioners will trip up occasionally. These things are getting good. That doesn't mean the same message repeated over and over again is going to make the layperson more effective, right?
You make a good point in some areas of there. I'm not sure I'm 100% on board yet, but you do make a good point in that, we spend a lot of time, like you said, trying to get to 100%, but we aren't spending enough time kind of just accepting what data is telling us that people are going to fall for phishing, period.
Right.
Yep. Either our education has to get a lot better, or we need to have processes in place that just assume people are going to fall for phishing.
Yep.
Right.
It's like driving on the road, right? Somebody might bump you. You can be the best driver in the world. Doesn't mean you're immune to an accident.
Right.
Retail businesses build in an assumed rate of theft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's more appropriate to shift the conversation in that direction. That's where I'm coming from.
All right. So I'll buy that for a second then. So let's shift down to updating your software. Is there any? So I'm going to look at you. Can you craft any legitimate reason why there is a company that doesn't and don't use the?
Am I the optimism whisperer?
You are
here?
right now. You are right. Okay, I get that there could be an old system that runs some arcane piece of hardware that
I'm not going
I get
that
right? But I'm talking about just modern OSs, modern software that you've written or that you purchased that isn't patched. Like, how often have we been on the other side of an incident where you're like, patches were out that would have protected you and you elected not to install them for 6 months? How are we still talking about this?
I'm going to reframe it entirely, not make it optimistic.
Make it positive.
No, I'm going to say stop the wishful thinking.
Okay.
Just because your hands-on keyboard occasional attempts to patch things are, how you live your life in terms of protecting your laptop or your servers if you're in that particular area of the field, it's not enough. I mean, we know that the systems that we see are going to be unpatched. It's a constant. It never ends.
And I'd say it's not a security task. I mean, sure, it has security implications, but that's just operational. I have an IT department. We need to maintain things, right? Yeah. It's putting oil in your car. That's it. I don't know. It's on the list. It's on the list. Yeah. I can't believe it. But actually, that's not true. I can believe it because we're faced with it. But I don't know. I did. I found this year's list pretty disheartening.
It's a rebuilding year. It's like the Red Sox this year. It's a rebuilding year. They leave 1 million people on base.
I don't think there's supposed to be rebuilding this year. Honestly, the only one that I looked at and I said, all right, MFA feels like it should be there. We've been talking about it for a while. People have treated it like a more challenging issue than probably it is. In a lot of ways, it's not as technically difficult maybe as it was, but we're seeing the movement there. I feel positive about the direction we're heading with MFA. Boy, the other three I struggled with. I have, as might be coming clear through the podcast tone today, but
yeah, especially the updating is getting a lot easier now. I mean,
so much easier.
Things like hot patching are becoming more popular. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons why people didn't update software is they don't want to reboot,
right?
Or they just never restart their computers, like my wife.
Yeah, I gotta imagine it's connected to just habit at this point in many respects.
Yeah.
Hey, that annoys me. I'm going to tell it to go away because it popped up and I don't like that.
Or, I remember in 2007 when I installed a patch and it crashed my server. Therefore, that must still happen.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
We get that.
Yeah.
So, somebody did have a slightly different take on the idea of see yourself in cyber, which was talking a little bit about sort of careers in cyber. And we actually had a podcast a little bit where we talked about some of the things that people can do in this space, in this career field. Certainly, the focus of that was trying to get more women into the cybersecurity space, more people of color into the cybersecurity space. I think that's a really good message, and for that takeaway, right? It is a really interesting field, minus maybe the 4 things that they're highlighting here, and there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for new people to come into the field and really find a place for themselves that's intellectually challenging, that isn't well defined.
So, I think it's important to sort of recognize that some people don't join because of the way that they perceive people to be cynical in our field. I mean, we're kind of demonstrating that in a reasonable way
today, then.
In a reasonable way. But those that are practitioners, I do think, need to remember that it's a rare person who completely learned on their own. It's probable that they had mentors. It's probable they sought out other venues for helping themselves learn. And if we have to interpret it in that context, which is reasonable here, then, reach out to somebody. Teach them something without, making them feel like they're silly for asking a question. That's probably a good message to share with the people who are more in the field, who look outward toward those who aren't.
Yeah, I mean, it can be easy to be jaded sometimes when you look at some of these things, right? But we deal with a lot of interesting things. I think part of the reason that I felt discouraged is these are pretty easily addressable, and I want to help people and companies that have been victims of really intentional, targeted, challenging incidents, not sort of that drive-by, hey, we exploited a known vulnerability, and as a result, now you're spending a lot of money to remediate something that you could have dealt with easier. Like you do get a little bit tired of that, because these are fixable things, easily fixable things. But so I don't really know. I normally know how to end these, and I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure today, because I feel like if you're not keeping your software up to date, if you don't have a program in place to sort of educate your workforce around the dangers of phishing, if you're not using strong passwords, I don't even know what to say. But and then if you're not thinking about MFA, you definitely should be doing all those things. We are happy to help actually implement them if people are interested in that. But there's a lot of work to be done in the security space. This is the low hanging fruit for sure. So on that positive message, I don't know if either of you have anything you want to add at the end.
No, I think as boring as this may be, sometimes fundamentals are good, right? It's almost like a little back to the baseball reference, a little bit of spring training for everyone, right? Yeah, maybe fall training, if you will.
So maybe people should go back and listen to our fundamentals podcast, because we do, and maybe that's it too, right? We've talked about this now twice over the last year. We've had our first one, and like our 40th was a fundamentals one, and here we are, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, talking about similar things.
And if anybody else seems to think that these are, normal, typical, well-worn topics, that's great. But self-assess to see if you're actually meeting all those requirements. And if you're not, maybe there's some work to do.
Right. And so there are posters and training materials and a whole variety of things on the, Cybersecurity Awareness Month website, that's CISA.gov. You can pull all that stuff down. I think, stay safe online. I think the stuff is linked there as well. Use those things internally, right? Post those posters on bulletin boards and send them out to folks. Get the message out for sure if you're struggling with any of those. So as always, we're happy to chat more about this. We appreciate everybody's listening, and we sincerely hope that you got some value out of today's podcast. Thanks for listening.
We'd love to hear your feedback. feel free to get in touch at Vancord on LinkedIn or on Twitter at Vancord Security. And remember, stay vigilant, stay resilient. This has been Cybersound.